Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Melinda Berdanier, and I am the Grants Coordinator at the South Dakota Humanities Council. I'd like to welcome all of you on behalf of the South Dakota Humanities Council, which promotes the annual Festival of Books. We're so pleased that you've joined us so far for our virtual 2021 event. We would like to acknowledge first and foremost that this program comes to you from ground which is homeland of the Oceti-Sakowin, the Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota people. The South Dakota Humanities Council honors and appreciates the Indigenous people who have the longest relationship to this place. Before this event gets underway, I'd like to share just a few housekeeping details. We ask that you keep your microphone muted throughout this event to minimize background noise. If you'd like to ask questions or share comments with today's presenter, please type them in the chat section on Zoom, which you can open by clicking on the conversation bubble at the bottom of your screen, or in the comments section on Facebook. We will pass along as many as possible at the end of the session. If you wish, we will also allow you to unmute at the end of the session so that you can ask questions directly. We encourage you to buy books by our presenting authors at your local independent bookstore. Our official festival booksellers are Books A Million and the Birdcage Bookstore and Mercantile, both which are in Rapid City. You can also buy directly from authors and publishers. Look for some links in the chat. To help us continue to improve the festival, we'd appreciate your filling out an evaluation form. We'll share a link in the chat section on Zoom, and we'll also email you a link to the survey at the conclusion of the festival. Finally, you can help keep the festival free by making a tax-deductible donation to the South Dakota Humanities Council. Just visit our website, sdhumanities.org, and click on the donate button. This festival would not be possible without the generous support of the numerous organizations and individuals who've already donated and are acknowledged on the back cover of the festival guide. Here's our beautiful festival guide with our, with our donors. And you can also find it on our website. And now on with the show. This program is called Climbing Book Mountains, The Writing Life, and features Ann Charles. Ann Charles is a USA Today best-selling author. She writes spicy fiction full of mystery, comedy, adventure, suspense, romance, and supernatural mayhem. A member of Sisters in Crime and Western Writers of America, she is currently juggling 5 different ongoing series and contemplating a 6th. When she's not dabbling in fiction, she's arm wrestling with her 2 kids, attempting to seduce her husband, and arguing with her sassy cats. First, we'll hear from Ann, and then I can ask any questions that you all will provide in the chat, and we'll continue the discussion from there. So now I'll turn the program over to Ann.
Hi, everybody. Let me know if you have any problems hearing, up here on the mountain, it's kind of sketchy technology, right? Thank you for coming today to hear about Climbing Book Mountains. This is a workshop that I've spent the last week researching, having fun with, putting it together. It's something that came to me over a year ago because I'm a bit of a mountain climbing documentary junkie. I love to climb the big mountains, and I love to climb them from my couch under a blanket, usually eating ice cream or chips or something like that, and shouting out things like, no, don't take your gloves off yet, it's too soon. No, oh, just one more step, you can make it. So yeah, I'm not a mountain climber. And if I had the opportunity to go to the top of Everest, I would be like, no, I'm just going to sit this one out on my couch again. However, watching all these movies and documentaries, I really started to realize how much this is like writing books. Okay, so they have better bodies, they're stronger, their legs are awesome, but otherwise, mentally, there's a lot of similarities for mountain climbing and for writing books. So before I go much further, let me start with, I want to tell you something about something called the death zone. Now, any of you that have read or watched anything on climbing the big peaks like Mount Everest, you've heard about the death zone. And what this is, and this is a quote, this is when climbers' brains and lungs are starved for oxygen. The risk of heart attack and stroke increase, and their judgment quickly becomes impaired. One mountaineer says it feels like running on a treadmill while breathing through a straw. This death zone is above the 8,000 meter mark, or over 26,000 feet on the mountains. And there are currently 14 peaks in the world that are over the 8,000 meter mark. So a lot of these mountain climbers, that's their goal, is to climb these big 14,000 or 14 peaks. And in that, they have to deal with all that comes with this intense climbing, including going into the death zone. A lot of people think it's the death zone because that's where you die. Well, yeah, but really it's your body that's dying faster than it can repair itself. And you usually have just a couple days most, and you're supposed to get right back out of that death zone, or you will start going into nausea, your brain swells, fluid in your lungs, all kinds of horrible stuff. So knowing about that, you can kind of understand why mountain climbing it isn't as simple as just strapping on a backpack and a warm coat and, starting up the mountain. We're going to climb to the top of Everest. No, it's not like that. You have to have years of training, not just to strengthen your body, but to learn the ropes of climbing. Well, same as climbing these super tall mountains. Writing a book is more than just sitting at a computer in a really hot hat like this and typing up a story. For us authors, it often takes years of training to learn the strengths and weaknesses of our unique writing voice, years of testing the ropes with family and friends and critique partners and early manuscript readers to really hit our stride on the page. I've written over 30 books, and I still feel like I have to train before every book gets going. It takes a lot of work. In mountain climbing, reaching the top, the summit, is really only half the journey. You have to get clear back to base camp, still alive and breathing. That's pretty important to get back down alive. Well, in writing, when you hit the end of your first draft, which is kind of like summiting, it's only half the journey. You have to follow through with multiple, often grueling rounds of editing and promotional jaunts and marketing before you can fully walk away, including book tours too, before you can fully walk away from, your book and move on to the next. In mountain climbing, when these guys climb these super high peaks like Mount Everest, there are often multiple camps that they hit along the way. Let me give you a little example. My old-fashioned slideshow here. You can see there's the red, those are camps all the way up the mountain here. So they do this, and there's usually 4 to 5 along the way as you climb to the peak, because it's places you go so far, you pause, you acclimate a little bit more, then you come back down, and then you go back up. And sometimes these mountain climbers will have to go back and forth from base camp several times just to acclimate before they reach the final camp before the summit up in the death zone. So much like writing a book, there are multiple places in the story where I have to come back down and consider, not only what's ahead of me, but what's behind me on the pages. At times when I have to pause and rest and let my brain kind of recharge and figure out how we're going to take this next step forward, which route we're going to take, all that good stuff. Now, as I said, acclimation is a necessity when climbing these super tall peaks, most mountains, but these peaks in particular, because before a climber goes to the summit, you're working most of the time at sea level or just a little bit above. So first, they have to start off at base camp, and they're usually there for weeks and weeks. I mean, it's not uncommon to stay at base camp for just 5 weeks, just doing some practice climbs of small things around there and building up to start heading up to the highest part. And they'll start at base, they'll be there a while, then they'll go to camp 1, spend a night or 2, come back down. And then they'll stay a couple days, then they'll go back up to 1, maybe they'll go to 2, maybe not. Come back to 1, back down to base camp, wait a little bit longer, make sure they're feeling okay, check all their vitals and do all that good stuff. And then they'll start making their way up to 2 and make it to 3. Now, sometimes they'll come back down, sometimes they won't, but you get the picture. And once they hit Camp 4 on Everest, then they have to get up and hit the top pretty quickly because they're in the death zone. Well, for the same thing for writing a story, before I reach the end of that first draft, I have to go up and down and come back and tweak a little. And sometimes I go clear back to base camp and rewrite parts all over again at the beginning to fit what's going on higher up on the mountain. It's a constant up, down, up, down. And that's just to get to the halfway point of summiting. So it's really interesting for me as a writer to feel like, oh yeah, I understand what you guys are going through, this constant back and forth. It's just so frustrating. And you just want to get to the end. You just want to summit this puppy, but it's not that easy. I mean, there is always the, mountain climber that does it quickly. There's always the writer that's an instant, they're just a genius and they go straight up and they're perfect and all that. I'm not one of them. So I want to talk a little bit more about 3 particular mountains here that were above the 8,000 meter mark that tower up into the death zone. The first one, you all know it. I already showed you. Good old Mount Everest. That one, we all know it's the biggest. It's everybody wants to climb it. Joe Schmo from Florida wants to work out in the gym for 6 to 8 months, pays $60,000 or whatever it is now for a permit to go up, goes with a mountain climbing guide group and up they go the mountain. That's Everest. And, that's fine. It's a bucket list thing for a lot of people. But Everest, even though it's the tallest above sea level, it's not the most deadly or the toughest technically to climb, which is kind of interesting to me because, you always think, oh, bucket list Everest. And after learning and reading all I have, I'm not as impressed with that. Now, okay, I still haven't climbed Everest, give that. But I just think, oh, okay, so you climbed Everest, but you didn't do some of these others we're going to talk about. But back to Everest, it is still a dangerous mountain. 6,000 people so far to date have climbed to the summit of Mount Everest. Of those 6,000, 311-ish have died. Approximately 1 in 20 die, that means. So you have a 1 in 20 chance of getting up to the top and back and going home, which are pretty good odds when it comes to mountain climbing. In May 1996 is one of the most famous tragedies that has happened up on Everest. That's kind of what got me into it. John Krakauer wrote a book, Into Thin Air, and I read that. And it's an interesting book, but if you really want to learn more about this whole situation and the tragedy that happened, I really recommend that you not only read that book, you watch the movies, and then you start watching the talks that the survivors of the tragedy give and the different documentaries, because it gives you a much more rounded picture of what happened that day and that night up on the mountain. Now, to bring this back to books, my Mount Everest is my Deadwood series. Nearly Departed is the first in that series. Now, I've climbed the Deadwood series mountain 12 times. There are 12 books out in this series currently, and more to come. I know the route. I know how to get to the top. However, that doesn't mean I can be lazy when it comes to writing these books. I have to beware of many potential hazards with every book I write, of course, and I have to work to keep the series exciting and keep the characters growing throughout every book so you don't get bored and feel like it's repetitious. So Deadwood series, Mount Everest, time and again I go, okay, let's hike all these base camps. Let's go up to the summit of the Deadwood series book. Let's put another one together and come back down to base camp. We have to be careful because there's zones where there's ice falls and stuff, and the ladders could break. But overall, we know the route to the top. So that's Mount Everest. The next one I want to talk about, let me put this book aside, is K2. K2 is known as the Savage Mountain. It's the second highest peak in the Himalayas. It's one of the most technically difficult peaks to climb. One mountaineer referred to it as a mountain on top of mountain, meaning he got so far where he felt like he'd climbed a whole mountain. And then he looked up and there was another mountain to climb yet to get to the summit. It's much, much more riskier than Everest, sorry. You need to know rock climbing. You need to know ice climbing. There's steep terrain. There's bad weather. Let me show you a little picture of K2 here. There's risk of deadly avalanche from there's a serac that is up high that they have to skirt just under. And getting back to base camp, and just getting to the base camp of K2 alone is a 100-mile trek from the closest city. So this thing is way back in there and it's super hard to climb. I've circled some of the camps as you go up the mountain. I don't know how well you can see it. If I was, really good with technology, I'd have a slideshow for you, but that's not me. I screw up technology, but I will show you this picture of the serac. This is the problem with it. You have to go up and you have to skirt along the bottom of this thing, and ice breaks off of this big chunk and falls, and any lines you have fixed, it'll just take them away. And if you're there, it'll just take you away. And down the mountain you go. It's a scary mountain. Many of the K2 deaths that have occurred, they died on descent. They made it to the summit. So we have over 377 who have summited to date. 87 have died. So you have a 1 in 4 chance. Remember, Everest was 1 in 20. This is 1 in 4 of getting up to the top and getting back down. In 2008, August, there was a well-known tragedy where 18 climbers made it to the top and they summited, but 11 of them died on the descent, didn't make it back down. And there are some documentaries you can watch if you want to learn more about these people. And it's very sad, some of the things that happen, because sometimes it's the simplest thing that went wrong, and sometimes it's stuff like, a piece of ice broke off that went wrong. So it's a amazingly savage mountain in what it'll do. Now, back to books. My K2 is my dig site series. Here's the second one in that series. This is archaeological mysteries with some supernatural comedy, some romance. There's currently only 2 books in this series, and that's because it's K2 for me. It takes so much time to research because it takes place in the Yucatan. I create dig sites that are brand new. I don't use anything like Chichen Itza or something that's already there. I create new ones. I build the temples. I figure out the history. I write up a history for me so I can remember it. I put together maps. Let me see if I can get a map here for you quick. It's on these are my bookmarks, but you can see these books have maps. That's the second book. And here's a different site. The first book site. So I come up with all these things in the history. So it's technical, it's hard. It takes me lots and lots of time, which is why there are currently only 2. I hope to write the 3rd in the series next year, and I've put it off for a couple of years, kind of standing at the base of my K2 and looking up and thinking, boy, I don't know about that. This is pretty tough. And going back to my Everest, my Deadwood series, because I'm comfortable with that one a little bit more, but I will return to the summit of K2 and I will write the 3rd book. I have all the stuff ready. I've done the research. It's time to go up that mountain. But first, there's my Annapurna. Now let me show you Annapurna. This is Annapurna. All these little black marks, these are different routes that climbers try to take up Annapurna. The interesting thing about Annapurna, it's the 10th highest peak. It's not the 3rd, it's not the 5th, it's not even the 7th or 8th, it's 10. So it's not near as high, right? I mean, it's still in the death zone, so it's still a biggie, but it's not the big guys. However, it is the most deadly and the most difficult to climb. Off these slopes here, avalanche after avalanche after avalanche comes down. You watch documentaries and they show the bad snow where there's a thin layer of snow and ice over a huge crevasse, and people step in the wrong spot and fall through, and that's the end of them. Hopefully they end quickly, but it takes a little while. So it's a horrible mountain in that way. There have been only approximately 200 people that have summited Annapurna. And of those, 61 have not made it back. So that number is then approximately 1 in 3, just to give you a feel of how deadly this mountain truly is. It's an amazing trek when they climb it. And it's so fun to watch these mountaineers use their logic and their skill and their muscles to get up this thing. So that's Annapurna. My Annapurna is the current novella I'm working on. I didn't know it was going to be Annapurna when I started, but it has turned into Annapurna. Now, this is the previous book. It's a novella for Thanksgiving that I wrote a couple years ago. That one went fast. Now I'm trying to fit in the one after this, but before the next full-length book, which is technically challenging as all get out to fit in between something and keep storylines moving. On top of it, I go up to base camp or camp 1, and I keep having to come back to base camp. I make it up to camp 3 even, and I have to come clear back to base camp, and I have to rewrite which route I'm taking, watch those avalanches come down, and try again to hit the summit. It's tough. It's taking me way longer, 2 months to write a novella. Usually I write 50,000 words in a month pretty easily. But no, I can't write this, but I will. I'm not going to give up. I'm going to keep going back, and I'm going to summit this puppy, I swear. So just as every mountain has its challenge, every book has its challenge. So now, got my notes over here. Let me flip this around. Next, I want to talk about the author and the mountain climbers. And in particular, I mean, we could go on all day about the different rock stars that climb these mountains, but I want to talk about one of the most successful mountaineers of our time, in my opinion, and that's Ed Viesturs. Let me show you a picture of Ed. Yeah, he's now retired, but he still takes guides people up Mount Rainier, I believe. Let me show you Mount Rainier, which is no small mountain. This is up in Washington, and I believe Mount Rainier towers over 14,000 feet. So it's a big, scary mountain too, but it's not in the Himalayas. So that's Ed. Now, Ed has climbed all 14 of the mountains that go over the death zone, or up into the death zone over 8,000 meters, all 14 without supplemental oxygen tanks. This is a big deal. Most of these climbers, once they get into the death zone, or even a little before, they have to have supplemental oxygen because, like I said, you're in the death zone. There's not enough oxygen in the air to, keep your body alive, actively alive, let alone carry, pounds of pack up a mountain. So Ed decided he wanted to do this without oxygen. But let me go back a little. He was initially inspired back when he was in high school in Illinois by a book called Annapurna. You guys know about Annapurna. It's a trouble mountain. And it's not a happy, skippy book by any means. The mountain climbers in this book suffer greatly, but he was still motivated, and he moved to the Pacific Northwest. He climbed Mount Rainier several times. Actually, he summited over 200 times over the years before he decided it was time to move on to the bigger peaks. And so at some point after leaving Mount Rainier, he decided he was going to do it without oxygen. And in his words, it's rather than bringing the mountain down to his level, he wanted to take on the mountain at its level. So I just love to watch anything that Ed is in. He's a wonderful speaker. He's so, I just can't explain. He thinks things through, and he has made mistakes, but anyone that can climb all these mountains and do it without oxygen, and Ed still has all 10 fingers and all 10 toes and his nose, nothing frostbit off, is amazing to me, because the things that happen to these climbers, it's horrible. I'm going to gently set Ed down over here. So I'm going to give you some quotes from Ed from the many different documentaries and shows I've seen with him, and let you see how, again, it plays into the writing world. One of his quotes that I hear often is, listen to the mountain when he's climbing. He listens to the mountain. For writers, we listen to the story and then we let it flow. You'll hear from many authors that the story practically wrote itself. That's when we can shut out all the outside world and we listen to the story. So similar to Ed, we just have to stop and listen. Another Ed quote is, climbing a mountain has to be a round trip. Well, writing a book is not over when you hit that summit and write the end of the first draft. It's not over by far. you have to see this thing through till you get back to base camp, through, like I said before, all the edits, all the promotion, all the marketing, book tours. There's so much work that goes into coming back down from the summit. So it's a round trip thing. It's not a one way up and you're all free. Another Ed quote: why do we climb mountains? To discover things about yourself and to find your passion. Why do we write books? To discover new worlds, to learn new things about ourselves through the power of putting words on the page, to share with you what we learn, to help you learn little bits about history, or even technical things. Through many Westerns, I've learned not only history, but things about the railroad and how things are built. So through our writing, we can share so much as well as entertain. Ed's quote here: planning, preparation, training, fortitude. That's what climbing big mountains is all about. Same thing here: planning, preparation, training, fortitude. That's what writing is all about. Perseverance. Time and again, when I'm asked, what's one thing you would tell a new writer? And I always say perseverance. You have to keep stepping forward, keep trying, keep, plowing through the snow, make it happen. Ed's quote here: you need to be flexible with your pencil. You need to, or flexible with your schedule, use a pencil. I can't tell you how many times I've plotted a book on paper, and after writing a chapter or two, I've had to go back, erase my plans and reroute, and then go a little bit further forward, come back, reroute. It's like I said earlier, up to camp 1, back to base camp, up to camp 1 and 2, back to base camp. It's the same type of thing. Be flexible. Here's one I like. Success is not measured in leaps or bounds in the mountains. It's day by day, it's step by step, and then it becomes breath by breath. Some instances you move forward, some days you hold fast, some days you go back to base camp. And if you're an author listening to this right now, I'm sure you're nodding in agreement, or inside at least, because writing for me and for many is often 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and just keep plowing forward. I've had to scrap scenes and start all over in a chapter, scrap big parts. It's just breaks your heart, but it's what you have to do. And this is from a mountaineer who talked about being in the death zone. You take 15 breaths often for every step. And some days it takes 15 breaths for every step for me. I can barely get 100 good words on a page. And I have to be happy with that. Go to bed, wake up, and try again, but keep going, persevere. The closer you get to the peak, the more you have to focus. Altitude can change how you make decisions. Every step near the top has consequences. For authors, the closer we get to the end of the first draft, the more you have to focus. You have to make sure you tie up all the plot threads neatly, answer the questions you posed in the story, give the reader a solid ending that won't make them want to throw your book against the wall and never read another one of your books again. It takes time, and you think things through as you get near the end. You don't just rush it, or if you do, you go back and edit it, but endings are crucial. There's a process to reaching the top that climbers need to go through. It's the same for writers. Each writer has a process, and I've tried skipping parts of my process, and I've ended up back at base camp frowning at the map, wondering where I went wrong, and then thinking, come on, you have to do it this way. This is how we always have to do it. Quit trying to skip ahead. So that's just a little bit about mountaineers and authors. Now I want to go to the mountain crew, AKA the author's team. So for mountaineers, when they climb Everest, for example, in Nepal, you have to have Sherpas. Sherpas are people that born and raised there in the mountains. They are, I think there's something with their blood physiologically. They are made to be in the mountains. They can handle the altitude far better than those of us who come from sea level. And let me show you a picture. These Sherpas, and in Pakistan, like where K2 is, you have your Pakistani Hunza porters. that do similar things as the Sherpa do in Nepal. Let me show you a picture quick of a Sherpa and then I'll go forward. Look at that load. These guys carry huge loads up to base camp. And then they do even more. So very, very few mountaineers even make it to base camp without these amazing climbers and porters. They carry in supplies for miles and miles. In addition, especially at Everest, the Sherpa will go up first over the ice fall. They'll scout trails, they'll fix ropes, they'll place ladders, they'll carry up food and oxygen and other supplies to the higher camps and get them all set up. Now, you may think, well, if they set ladders last year, why do they have to go do it all again? Because the ice fall, which is between Camp 1 and Camp 2, is a moving body of ice coming off the glacier. So what you have last year is going to probably be significantly changed or gone because it keeps moving and things snapping. So you have to reroute through that ice fall every time. And that's what these guys do. They're amazing. And here's a little picture of Pakistani porter for you. You kind of, I'm not very good with this thing since I can't see it, but you get the idea. These guys, they carry a lot. They do a lot. So just as mountaineers need help getting up. Oh, and there's one other point I wanted to make before I say this. Sir Edmund Hillary, first to, get to the summit of Everest in the 1950s, there were 40 people involved in getting him to the summit. 2 of them summited, Edward and one of the Sherpa, but the others were all just support team getting him up there. And same for authors. So there's very few of us that make it to the end without the support of so many around us. Your spouses, your kids, your friends who cheer you on, your fellow writers who are helping you brainstorm and figure out plot holes. There's editors who find all those darn grammatical errors. First draft readers who give great feedback. Beta readers who look for those final little buggers that make it through all the other eyeballs. All this makes up our author team to get us up the mountain. We may hit the summit writing the end on our own, but it's not truly alone. We have so many people along the way right there with us, and many celebrating at the end with us as well. So personally, I have a crew of about 50 to 60 people who help me up the mountain and back down safely. And without them, I wouldn't make it even halfway there. I have a huge support team. I'm fortunate to have them because as a team, we're so much stronger than when we're individual. Checking the time here quick. We have a short thing, so let's wrap it up. Back to base camp. At high altitude, you never know who will do well. And even the best mountain climbers can falter up high, and a newbie can make it clear to the summit and back and feel okay. You don't know. In that 1996 tragedy, Scott Fisher was one of them who didn't make it back down. And he was sick and ailing for so much of it. He never came back. On top of whatever was going on with him physically, the altitude just knocked him down. So there's really an element of luck in summiting and making it back. And there's an element of luck in publishing, just the same as mountain climbing. Things will happen when you're an author that you cannot anticipate. For climbers, this means weather, health-related emergencies, avalanches. For writers, this means life smacking you with a fly swatter repeatedly, as it tends to like to do with me. I'm always like, stop, stop. There's seemingly insurmountable writer's blocks when they hit, and unexpected shifts in the story that I'm thinking, oh, why are we going that way? And many more things that will make you want to beat your head against the wall. So again, there's so many fun similarities. Here's a quote from David Snow. I have 2 of them actually from David Snow, who's another mountaineer. Your greatest success is just one step beyond your greatest failure. Now, for me, this is the case of Nearly Departed in Deadwood. I'm going to grab that again. This puppy, this mountain. So I tried to publish this way back in 2010 using one of the big publishers. I had editors interested. It went through months and months going up the chain of the publishing house. And I even had so much time as it was making its way up that particular, mountain, I guess, if you will, to write the second. I wrote the second book in the series. And this thing made it to the final acquisitions meeting for the publishing house, and then they rejected it. And it's, those of you who know me know it was a marketing decision. They didn't think it would sell. It's set in the Midwest. If I'd let this be my greatest failure and just walk away and given up, there would not be 12 more in all the other books, because I would have walked away from writing. It was discouraging. I was mad. I got a ticket that night from driving fast, angry. And then I went and drank a whole bottle of wine. It was not a pretty night. However, I kept going, and it's been my greatest success since, because it sold more than any of my other books to date. She still sells a ton. She's a wonderful first book, and I'm so fortunate that this story came out of my brain and that all the support around me told me to keep going. So let's move on. I'm running out of time. Another quote from David Snow: "It's what the mountain reveals about us that has any lasting value." So at the start of every climb, and I kid you not, 30 plus books, I look up at the mountain I'm about to climb, and then I say to my husband, I don't think I can do this again. This is hard. It's too hard. I don't think I can do it. I don't know how I did the last, whatever one. And he'll say in return, you said that last time, you can do it, and you will. Now get writing. So the mountain reveals, at lasting value, my perseverance. I'm not going to give up. I keep trying. There are many times when I think about other jobs. I remember back to my fast food days running a register, and that seems so much more, fun, easy, lightweight, but, I'm going to keep going, and I'll keep trying, because this is what I do. I climb these book mountains. On the horizon, I have another little picture. On the horizon, there are always more mountains to climb. There's more books to be written, and every year I need to try to reach higher, reach the next level within myself, increase my skills, and improve my process. But first, I have to get to the top of this puppy and back down again in one piece of mind, and keeping in the forefront of my brain that the last word always belongs to the mountain. So respect the mountain. So anyway, thank you for listening to that. Now I'm going to look over and see what kind of questions you guys got. And I want to add that I'm truly amazed that I could wear this hat this whole time. I do have a fan blowing on me, because here in Arizona in the mountains, it's not that cold. Okay, let's see. Gail, to everyone, what does your writing training look like? That's a good question. I spend a lot of time. I have other authors' books that I really, really love, and movies too, because I'm a visual learner. So I spend a lot of time. Let's say I'm going to write more of an action adventure with, like the Jackrabbit series that I'm currently working on. There's a lot more. It's kind of Treasure Island, action adventure, humor, some romance. It's a mix that way. So I'll spend a lot of time picking certain movies that I know well and watching them and soaking up the humor, thinking about characterization, watching body language, body movements, so I can try to figure them how to put that on the page. And I will research where needed, anything that I'm going to talk about. I recently posted a thing in Facebook that had something about my husband was looking through my phone at all my open windows, saying, "You've got too much open here." And one of the in the browser window was something about bloodletting, penis bloodletting. And that's because it's for a book. And he came across that and he was kind of like, should I be worried? And I'm like, oh no, that's just more book research. So it's a mix of things, as well as just studying structure on the books I love. That's a lot of what I do in between. Plus, I really think it's important that for writers, we let our brains rest and have some creative fun and just soak all that kind of stuff up. Bill, hi, Bill. Good to see you again. When and how do you determine you're done writing a particular book? Do you mean, if you mean making it to the summit, it is when I finally hit the end, of course. But if you mean base camp, I have an actual process list that my husband and I and my sister-in-law, who helps me, we've come up with, and it's about 2 pages full of checkoffs, and we go through the process, and it includes writing, it includes the illustrations that my brother C.S. Kunkel does for me, and it includes all the marketing and promotion we're going to do, and it's even down to the detail of sending the book in for copyright to the Library of Congress. So we have to get through all the checks on that list before I feel like that book is done and I can move on fully. Now that I've already started writing the next book by then, or at least study, prepping to, but I do have to finish that list because I am a Virgo and we like lists and we'd like to check all the boxes off before we're done. Melinda, how are we doing on time? Are we?
Okay, so it's about 20 till. I think we would like to try to wrap things up within the next 10 minutes, by 10 till, so people can get on to their next event. So people can there's still plenty of time to write your questions. I have a question for you that I was thinking about when you were talking about the challenges of writing a book and all the importance of perseverance, and you were kind of relating that to climbing the mountain. I'm just wondering what kind of things you do in your own personal life to help manage all those emotional ups and downs of sometimes feeling frustration with roadblocks or things that are happening that that just stop you, and balancing that with your desire to continue. How do you personally manage all of that? Is it exercise? I mean, what is it?
I'd love to tell you it's yoga and Pilates and a lot of meditation and all these good things that make me sound really sophisticated. But in truth, it's a lot of stomping around, being upset, frustrated, complaining to my poor husband, I can't do this, and talking it through. I'm a very, very much a verbal communicator. I need to talk about it, and sometimes talk about it till he's just like, oh, please, come on, you can do this. But really, I have some wonderful, including my husband, some wonderful friends and family members that help me. I vent, I talk about it. And as I'm talking, I'm working through all that energy, the negative stuff. And I'm coming back to, oh, I can do this. I can do this, and sometimes it's them giving me a kick in the hind end. Sometimes it's just through all of that coming out, realizing, oh, this isn't so bad. We can work this. We've done this before. So, and I do some meditation and I do yoga and Pilates. So, I mean, I do that, but I'm not like, oh, namaste all the time. I just try to do it because sitting on my hind end in a chair so long makes me walk like I'm 80. So I have to get up. I have to keep doing exercises to keep, my body in shape as I keep climbing these book mountains I have. But that's a great question. Thanks for asking that. The visual learning as a tool. A lot of authors are criticized for poor endings. What authors have endings that you love? Oh boy. Oh, I have to think. I haven't thought about. There are so many books I love, and I'm really okay. Here's an example with a movie with my husband and I, a difference of opinion, and I don't not love this ending, but Good Will Hunting. For those of you who've watched that movie, and I don't want to ruin it for those of you who haven't. It's a great movie, but at the ending, I wanted a little more. And my husband said, no, that's enough. And I said, no, I want more. So, to me, we needed just a little bit more follow up on some of the things, but for him, it's not. So again, you have to keep that in mind as an author. What you think is a great ending might not be for someone else. And that's where, to me, beta readers and first draft readers are really important because they will give you the feedback you want. You can give it to your mom. It's a little different for me because my mom is one of my readers and she'll tell me straight up if she doesn't like something. But a lot of times if you give it to your family, they'll say, oh, this is great. You did a good job. But really, you need to find people that will tell you the honest truth. There's so many wonderful books. I'm trying to think. Flint. Okay, let's just go to one Bill and I were talking about recently, Bill Markley. Flint by Louis L'Amour. I really love the ending of that book. He wraps it up. He brings it back around. It's a great story. And I walk away from that just smiling, thinking about the character and what happened. Do you study movies, TV shows for craft research as well as studying books? All the time. as I mentioned, I am a visual learner. Movies do so much more to help me than reading books. Now, with reading books, I can see how they're structuring things and how they're showing maybe some body movements and tagging that. But with movies, I can watch someone be surprised, and then I'll pause and go back and watch it again to see what expressions, was their mouth open? Did their nostrils flare? Did their eyebrows go up? How did they react to something? And that helps me when I'm writing. I often have a mirror around, and it's not to just gaze into my own eyes. It's to make faces at and, kind of react and then try to see how that looked so I can put it on the page. And movies are wonderful for that way. Plus, they're just the visual showing you different ways of laying out the plot can be really fun in a movie. I think that's about our time, isn't it?
Yeah, we got a few more minutes if anybody wants to.
Okay, good.
type in.
I'm not trying to rush off. I just don't want to go over because I know people have to get to the next one as well.
Something that I do, I'm always interested in this. It's probably a question that people get asked a lot. Like, do you ever hear from your readers? And if you do, what might they say to you about your books? Do you ever get letters?
Yes, readers are amazing. And when they take the time to write to us or to me, I'm just, first of all, I can't thank them enough, because usually what comes in, they make my day. They say something kind, they say how it affected them, they say they used it, the humor got them out of a situation, helped them get through a situation that was really hard for them, or it's their go-to to get away from life stresses. All these things that really reinforce the reason that I do climb the book mountains, to not just entertain, but give them something to smile about, something lasting, and it's something to give them hope to continue and keep trying. So I do, just like everybody else, periodically get somewhat, a negative one coming in, and I don't respond to that, because it's just, that's a bad thing to do. We've seen that go south for so many authors, but I respect that everybody has their opinion on, the story they read. But I do truly appreciate when I get the kind words, not to just boost a fragile writer ego, but rather to give me the motivation to keep climbing, because it's like getting supplemental oxygen all of a sudden. It's a breath of fresh air, and you go, oh, there is a reason I want to keep doing this and take, every step forward. And this will go somewhere. It'll land in someone's hands, and it'll make maybe make them smile or chuckle and brighten their day. And so for that, it's worth it.
Yeah.
I think that's it. If anyone else has any questions, you can always email me privately, ann@anncharles.com, and ask away. But thanks for listening.
Sounds good.
Thanks for listening to this new thing, the workshop I put together, and hopefully my, old-fashioned slideshow kept you entertained somewhat as I talked, me and Ed climbing mountains. And I appreciate your time, and I appreciate the Festival of Books. Let me give this workshop.
Yeah. Well, on behalf of all of us at the South Dakota Humanities Council, we're just grateful that you could share your time and your expertise with us. And we just want to thank everybody out in the Zoom for being there and participating and having the questions and being in our audience and just enjoying it. So I hope you're able to enjoy many more presentations over the next few days. And don't forget to visit our website, sdbookfestival.com/virtual for more programming that's coming up. So yeah, Anne, if you have any final remarks before we leave each other?
No, just keep reading books. All of us authors appreciate all of you readers. And for all of you authors out there, good luck. Keep going forward and climbing those book mountains along with us.